I'll start with just a reminder on what our plans are for this time. So we're planning on an hour, so we'll go until 8:40, and we'll take. I have a stack of 8. We narrowed it to 8 questions, and there are more available if we happen to run out of time. So each candidate or each finalist is going to be given the opportunity to respond to the questions, and they'll have up to 3 minutes to do so. And we'll move through each one then. So first question. Our district is structured into innovation zones. This structure has allowed teachers, staff, parents, and students to have more of a voice in what education looks like for us. How do you feel about this type of site-based management and decision-making?
Excellent. Thanks. So I love the Innovation Zone model, and there was a day back in December 2010 when I had a chance to sit down with then board members and district leaders, and in January of 2011, so a little over 2 years ago, I was the facilitator at the initial session where we designed the concept of innovation zones. And as a consultant, you often come into a client's workspace and you do some work for them, and you're grateful for the work, and you go away, and that was a job. But I got actually quite excited, and some of you were there at that meeting, and you can testify. This thing that emerged out of that meeting was very compelling. The idea of locally owned, locally sourced leadership, which is a little different from site-based management. The idea that a zone of schools could identify themes that they particularly cared about, or even a culture that they particularly cared about, that was very exciting to me, which is why I started watching this district and listening attentively to what was happening to leadership in Falcon 49. I live 7 miles between here and Pikes Peak, due west. Just off Dublin, just a little west of Vista Ridge. And so it wasn't real hard for me to keep track. I love the idea that a community has taken ownership of its children's education. And so when I see innovation zone plans, innovation presentations for waivers or requests for waivers that have unanimous support from administration and 95% support from the teachers and unanimous support from PTAs, I'm frankly inspired by that, because we don't get that very often in education. I would defy you to go back more than 3 years ago and find any initiative in Falcon 49 that had a 95% approval rate from teachers and parents. And yet all of the innovation plans that are coming forward have a great deal of community support. And so I think in terms of the decision making and the site-based leadership, what's so exciting about the innovation zones is the transfer, as I showed in my presentation, the flip from a school system led by a board down to the student, to flip that around to a system of schools led by communities.
Actually, I'm completely inspired by the zone concept. It was one of the things that attracted me to this position. I've long been an advocate for putting the resources and the decision making at the front line of learning, or as close to the front line of learning as can possibly be, and to enabling shared decision making or collaborative decision making at the source. And I think that the zones lend themselves just to that, as well as the opportunity to innovate and create in ways that allow schools and feeder systems to go beyond traditional models, sort of break the rules or out-of-the-box thinking. And I think that because they're not necessarily competing with each other, they each have their own boundaries and their own sort of their mission vision within each one. They learn from each other as well, and oftentimes inspire each other within the zones within a school system. I've seen some of the detailed plans and the current and emerging plans, and it's nice to know that they're constantly revisiting those from the beginnings of the 2011 model to what is coming out now in the 2012-2013 plans. They're continually coming back to make sure, in the spirit of continuous improvement, is this what we want for our school community? The challenge for us as a school system is to bring those zones together to feel a sense of pride and ownership as a school system. And I think that would be the place where I would want to see go for next steps, is how can we honor individuality of each zone, but yet still feel a sense of community as a school system in Falcon School District 49.
Research shows that community engagement is important to the success of a child's education. How will you engage the district parents in the education of our children?
Community engagement is essential. It's one of Hattie's top IFXIs for parent engagement, home engagement in the child's education, and we constantly want to promote that. On Monday when I was at Sand Creek, the young man that was walking me around, who was a basketball player, also reiterated that. He said, I'd love to see more community members at my basketball games. I'd love to see them in our schools and coming to our plays and things like that. I think that this world, the way people are spread so thin, and because people are just so overwhelmed and overworked sometimes, they feel overextended in wanting to commit, but we've got to bring it back to the neighborhood school. We've got to bring it back to the ownership, and we do that through asking our community how we're doing. So to me, it's about surveying the community on how we're doing and taking a pulse on how the community feels that we're doing, and constantly coming back to look at how can we serve them better, how can we accommodate their needs better, and how can within each zone, how can they service their populations better in the spirit of continuous improvement.
So as the innovation zones have emerged and as individual identities have sort of solidified and coalesced, it's become very clear that there's something great happening at the zone level, and it seems to be a fusion and kind of in the best sense of the word, a combination of the identities of the schools that make up the zone. And so it was actually really encouraging, that walk that we had around the 4 schools on Monday, not only meeting the students, but really seeing the fruit of 2 very long years of work to make the concept of the innovation zone actually operational. Very exciting to see. Very exciting to see that even transitions in leadership at the zone level. So we have 2 different leaders now than we had when we started out, and yet the zones are moving forward. And I think it's important when you think about a system of schools to think about what's the unit of improvement. Where does improvement happen? What's the unit of innovation? I'm increasingly a believer in innovation at the micro level, at the classroom level, at the school level, or at the grade or department level, and then scaling that up as it works. And I think when people see their innovative ideas coming to fruition, whether that's in a classroom or across a school, they are going to engage with that. So you think about gears. Gears engage, they do this, and what we want to do is we want to give more people more opportunities to connect with the educational plans that are emerging out of the zones. I think the zones have been an unqualified success, and it is also indisputable that they are just the beginning of what's going to come. They have just begun to lay the tracks, and I cannot probably express, I'm a pretty articulate guy, but I'm not sure I can express how excited I am to see where these tracks can go if we keep in the innovation mindset and keep supporting the zones.
Provide us an example of a time when you were an architect or originator of a change effort.
So I came to a school called the Classical Academy, which is a charter school about 10 miles away from here on the north side of District 20, in 2003. And I came as a secondary principal. And at that time, I had already been doing some teaching in higher ed in a blended model called a flex model. And I asked our board of directors in 2003 if we could start thinking about online options. And they said, sure. So we had a meeting with a guy named Tim Snyder, who at that time directed Colorado Online, which was a major initiative to begin to develop online curricula to use in our public schools. This is 10 years ago, so think about how ancient that is in terms of online education. Well, we kept talking about that, so in 04 and 05, we continued to talk about that, and in 2005-06, we began a pilot program where we took just one class, a biology class, and one gifted teacher, and we had them meet in the hour after school, one day a week. And then the rest of the week, our students used this ancient technology called Blackboard, and they were interacting with the teacher online. And then the next year we added another class, and then the next year a third. And in 2008-09, we applied to Academy District 20 and then to the State Board of Education to become a multi-district online program that is now called College Pathways. So I joke, I say College Pathways is an overnight success that took 5 years to come to fruition. College Pathways was an idea. I worked 80, 90 hours a week for a year and a half to take it from concept all the way up to a partnership between our school, Pikes Peak Community College, New Life Church, because of some of the property issues, was involved in this partnership. And what began as a little idea, I was the shepherd of this thing. I was the Papa founder of this thing all the way up to approval at the state level. Today, College Pathways is the most successful online school in Colorado. And there are lots of schools with comparable demographics, but there are some things about our partnerships that make our school work. I'm very proud that we've won both the James Irwin Award and the Governor's Distinguished Improvement Award, the only online school that's done that. And I'm also proud, and I think Mr. Bay and Mr. Ridgway would be happy about this, that over the last 3 cycles, College Pathways has spun off $600,000, $700,000, and now $1.2 million additional revenue. That's net revenue to the school system. And so not only is this great school a leading model for other schools to follow, and not only is it serving almost 500 students and families an incredibly rich set of options and giving them free college tuition, but it's also making the mothership organization more viable by providing this revenue. So I'm very proud to have taken that thing from blank to where it is today.
My first opportunity to make some real change in school was in the late 80s. I was hired in Douglas County Schools in Minden, Nevada, not Colorado, to come in and transform the traditional industrial arts in the middle school to technology education programs. It was about the time when some of the new research and the scans came out about what kids needed to know and be able to do differently, moving from the industrial age into more of the 21st century kinds of skills. And so I had the opportunity to research and work with a team and lead them to transform those labs from the very, very traditional middle school and high school industrial arts labs to Tech Lab 2000s and the modular technology labs and things like that. Because of the success of that program, I was hired then by Westminster District 50 to come in and lead a school, Career Enrichment Park, to transform their traditional career prep programs, very traditional programs, into career clusters. So I was hired in the 90s then to come in and work with teams of teachers collaboratively to redesign and rethink how we deliver education to high school students for career preparation. We were successful in initiating and adopting 2 programs, environmental studies and graphic communications. And in those we integrated academic content as well as the career and technical skills that students needed in a new design for how occupational education and vocational education delivery systems could occur. From there, I moved to the Archdiocese of Denver, and while it wasn't necessarily innovative by other means, when I came into the Archdiocese of Denver, we started the very first standards-based education curriculum, and it was an exciting opportunity to work with the pastoral group as part of the Archdiocese, as well as teachers and administrators, to identify standards-based theology, which was very new and different for anybody. And then finally, in my last position in Inglewood Schools, we created a school that was at the request of parents and teachers called Inglewood Leadership Academy. We started it as a school, an optional school for middle school students, high-achieving middle school students, to bring them focused instruction in a small learning environment, and created from scratch this innovative program that still is highly successful today.
What are your ideas about motivating, retaining, and supporting the development of teachers within Falcon School District?
One of the greatest concerns that I have for this school district at this time is the loss of great minds, great teachers, and great talent. And I think that we've seen mass exodus of some of the best and brightest to school districts in the West. It seems that this school district has become sort of the breeding ground and training ground for some of the greater school districts in this state. And I think we've got to stop that. We've got to start talking about how do we honor our teachers? How do we provide them with incentives? And how do we show them how much we care about their work every day, so much so that they want to stay and be part of a long-term sustainable effort of quality education in the school system. Number one indicator by any measure of student success and achievement is the quality of the teacher and the leaders. Number two is leaders, number one is teachers. We can't afford to keep hiring and recycling out every few years the great teachers that are part of the school system. I was in awe on Monday, meeting and walking and talking with some of the finest educators that I personally have had the privilege of knowing. And if the few that I met on Monday are an indication of the rest of the troop here in District 49, you're an amazing group, and your kids are in great hands. And I think we just need to provide possibly focus group meetings to find out what their needs are and to do our best to meet those needs. Work closely with administrators to help cultivate and nurture the long-term sustainability of teachers within our system. Find out what their needs are, whether it be professional development or a career ladder, where they might see themselves as moving up. Although some of our best and brightest should stay at the classroom level, I don't think that you should move a teacher from a teacher to an administrative level. It's not necessarily the best thing we should be doing for kids, but maybe a teacher leadership role where they become mentors and support their colleagues in the field.
So I'm going to start with a sort of surprising confession. I was encouraged to leave seminary, and I'd been there a year, and I studied my Greek, and I was dreading Hebrew, and I'd studied some theology, and a really wise veteran elder professor sat down with me and he said, "Peter, you have a heart for teaching and leadership, and while I'm not telling you couldn't be a pastor, I'm telling you that there's a ministry in education and you ought to think about serving there." And I'm deeply grateful that he said that, because he seemed to intuitively understand that the thing that made me come alive wasn't going to be church leadership, it was going to be school leadership. And I think that is exactly what we need to do to motivate, retain, and support our teachers, is we have to find ways in this new reality, these new schools that we lead. We have to find ways for teachers to do the thing that makes them come alive. And one of the things that keeps teachers from coming alive is dealing with unreasonable or overly general rules, which is why I like innovation zones and why I like the ability for a teacher leadership function to rise up and ask for a waiver. Say, this is the thing that's making us crazy. Take that away and you will get more of our best. So I call that addition by subtraction. You take away something noxious and you get something pretty amazing. So the first thing I'd be looking for is to figure out what is keeping our teachers from coming alive. What's the thing that they wish they could do, but something's holding them back? I'd want to ask that question, ask it a lot, listen carefully. The second thing is to give teachers the genuine voice that professionals deserve. Here's how I do that when I was a principal. We have a lot of in-service days that in-service days are meeting magnets. So as principals, we like to just throw all of our miscellaneous meetings on an in-service day. I tried to undo that very intentionally. I said to teachers, we need 8 hours of professional learning out of you, your group, your grade level, your department. Here's all we ask of you. Because you're professionals, you bring us a plan, and you say sometime between now and the end of the school year, we're going to have an 8-hour experience. It might not be on that day on the calendar that's called in-service day, but we're going to have a learning experience. So some of our teacher teams went together to a museum in Denver and just looked and learned. And some of our teachers worked together on that day at the school. But what made them come alive, what motivated them, was that we were treating them like the professionals they are. They cared about that. We said, we have a term we use, your pace, your place. Anytime we have unstructured work, we say to our teachers, go where you want to go, your place, work at your own pace. As long as you get what we need turned in at the right time, you are professionals. And I think when you treat people that way, you retain great people.
2 questions here about, that I'll ask separately about special education. District 49 has partnered with a leading local educator, Dr. Christy Casa, to increase inclusive practices within the district. What is your understanding and vision of inclusion for students with mild to significant support needs?
One of the things that I really appreciate about this district is that the Special Education Advisory Committee is not seen as a kind of an agitator entity, but it is seen as an internal agency. Even though it is not officially born of the bureaucracy of the district, it is treated and honored and represented as a crucial part of the decision-making process. Do you understand how unusual that is? Usually when you have assertive parents, it intimidates us as administrators. It makes us nervous. We feel like, oh, we have to dial down and be super careful because we might get caught missing something. And instead, I see a genuine partnership here, and I know that it's early, and I know that there will be stumbles along the way. But when you have a group of parents and administrators having authentic conversations about how to do best for our kids, then I think you are going to get true inclusive practices. You're going to get inclusion that is seen as a strength and not as a disruption. And I mentioned earlier in my introduction that among my 6 children, there are 3 IEPs, 3 English language learners, a couple of 504s, significant health issues, autism spectrum disorder. And I've learned as a parent how easy it is for us as a school system to treat those children as if they are an interruption of our work. But they're our work. They're our work. Imagine walking into a business and somebody says, I can't make you that meal or prepare that return or take your case. You're a disruption. No, the reason you're here is to serve those kids. And so both as a classroom teacher, as a principal, but especially as a parent, I've come to really love the heart of people who want every child to have the maximum amount of access they can have. And to me, it's a close analog to what I said in the previous question about what makes you come alive. There may be a child with a communication challenge, and getting them a communication board is the thing that makes them come alive. Why wouldn't we want to do that? There was a day when my son David, and I've written about this online, he sat before a 6th grade class at a new school. And he said, I have Asperger's syndrome. Here's what that means. He said, sometimes I'm not going to read your body language. I'm going to need you to tell me that you're irritated with me, not just show it. He said, sometimes things are going to irritate me and it's not going to make sense, the light or the sounds. And he led his classmates into inclusion because he had a teacher and a dad and a school system that gave him the support he needed to be present in that classroom and not have to be normal. He could be what he was and not worry about whether somebody thought that was normal or not. And that's what true inclusion should look like.
Inclusion, the notion of inclusion has been around for quite a long time. And I've had the privilege of working in every school district I've worked in has fully embraced special needs students and provided the least restrictive environment and the most inclusive environment as possible. And I recall on Monday walking through Sand Creek High School, one of the art classes, and had the opportunity to see it in practice. Students were working on 3D art, molding their clay, and there was a paraprofessional with 3 other students on the same bench down the bench, and they were drawing, and I was asking where was their pot, and they had already finished it, and they were so excited to talk about the product that they were waiting. It was in the kiln. They were so excited, and in their excitement they were showing me all the work they were doing in preparation for the next thing they were going to be doing in the art class. Beyond just classes, elective classes like art and PE, I've seen inclusive environments really provide such a wonderful opportunity for non-special ed students to exercise their leadership, to embrace diversity, to come out of themselves to help and assist and to be part of that. I've seen special ed students learn from their peers, so it elevates the whole class in terms of skill development. And I can't even imagine, and I can't even remember a day when inclusive wasn't that way. Unfortunately, where I live right now in Abu Dhabi, they haven't figured that out yet. And they still have schools that are about special ed and then the regular kids. And they're slowly starting to move in that direction. And we've been working closely with our school system in Abu Dhabi to bring our kids into those schools where they house the special needs kids as part of their service learning, to work closely with them. America is probably one of the only countries in the world that embraces the notion of full inclusion to the highest level, and it absolutely makes a difference in the lives of all kids.
How does your professional experience qualify you to lead and support leadership of special ed and an inclusive educational model?
My background in administration obviously has prepared me for, you take all of the classes for special needs, special ed administration. In every school that I've worked with, I've either supervised special ed programs or worked collaboratively with a special ed director who supervised those programs as part of a collaborative team. And as we look at any element of planning for school systems, it's imperative that we meet the needs of all of our kids. And so I feel, while I don't have first-hand experience as a special educator, I've had ample opportunity to supervise special educators and be part of the development of summer programs and year-round programs that benefit students, mild, moderate, and severe needs. I've also worked in, because of my background in career and technical education, back in the day, it used to be the place where all special ed kids were placed, and as if that was their avenue for future career preparation. And I think that's changed quite a bit over time, and we're starting to see the benefit of expecting and getting much more out of our special ed kids than we've ever had before, given the right amount of accommodations and modifications.
So in the previous question, Mr. Anderson mentioned Dr. Casa, and the work that she has done really emphasizes a spirit of identity. And so she talks about using person-first language. She talks about the importance of universal design. And I think my ability to, frankly, my fluency with the concepts of special education and the ways we design our classrooms before the learners arrive. Before the learners arrive, we think about how can we manage light? How can we manage auditory distractions? How can we manage access, physical access into the classroom and egress from the classroom? Because we don't know what kind of child is coming our way, but we know that they're going to be ours. And so we want to build a place where they are good to go the first day they walk in the door. I showed you in my presentation that mobility plan that we built for a student at TCA. That mobility plan communicated care. And so my professional experience as being a principal, I am also not certified in special education, but I've lived it. And I have been in hundreds of IEP meetings. I have presented in 4 or 5 state conferences about special education. I'm particularly attuned to autism spectrum disorders, Asperger's as it has previously been called. And the main professional thing that I've done is to try to help teachers understand that when a child is shutting down, they're not being defiant, they're being self-protective. Or when that child has an experience of an obsessive compulsive episode, it's not because they want to be overwhelmed by that sensory overload, it's because they're overwhelmed. And so helping the adults in the building, in the classroom, in the district, helping the adults understand, we would never think that a child who, let's say, was a double amputee, that they moved slowly because they were being resistant. But the child who cannot look you in the eye while also listening to you teach is just as incapable. That's not defiance. That's because they have a neurological wiring that gives them a different set of needs. And so my professional experience of being through, both as a father, but also as a teacher and a principal, of being through the meetings, the planning, of actually delivering the structures to thousands of teachers through my presentations, is to help the adults be confident and also remember that they are ultimately responsible for the heart of a child.
I think you're being asked to pick one of these 3 descriptors. Would you say your leadership style is more directive, collaborative, or cooperative?
I think excellent leaders have the ability to recognize the moment and apply the kind of leadership that is needed at the moment. A few months ago, we had a child on a rail who was so distraught that he was trying to think of how he could end the pain. That is not a time to be cooperative or collaborative. That's a time to be directive. But when we were trying to get New Life Church, the Community College System of Colorado and all their lawyers, Academy District 20, their lawyers, the State Board of Education and CDE, and a union representative, when we were trying to get those people to agree on the terms under which we could operate this school called College Pathways, that was the time for collaborative leadership. That required a lot of diplomacy, an amount of patience that I do not have, and so I had to channel the patience of others, because we had to walk through a whole series and many iterations of agreements before we could come to an agreement that we were all excited about. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about the background details of what eventually happened. In order for College Pathways to exist where it exists, we had to get a lease from the community college system. So we got 2 30-year leases for $1 a year. That took a lot of lawyering. The site is on top of a gas pipeline. That took some involvement with the EPA. We use the parking lot that is owned by Pikes Peak Community College, but was paved by New Life Church. So we had to get New Life Church's involvement and permission. We had to get District 20 to approve us as an online school. Then we had to get CDE, and then finally the State Board of Education. And so there's an example where I had to be both collaborative, which is to co-labor together, to work on it together, but I also had to be extremely cooperative. And it is not in most of my DNA to bend a knee to bureaucracy. But there are times when even an innovative leader like I am has to submit to the rigor and the process, the legal and financial analysis of people that are more expert in those areas. And so when I joke about College Pathways being an overnight success that took 5 years to make, I say it with a big smile because it worked out. But it was never certain. It was because of the kind of leadership that I was able to apply in the moment that we were able to develop something that has turned out to be really amazing. And when I look around this district and I see the different styles of the innovation leaders and of the school leaders, I see that this is a district that also practices metamorphic leadership, where you shift in and out of the different modes based on the need of the moment. And that's why I'm excited. It's why I aspire to come and lead here, because that's the environment that I want to work in.
I guess my leadership style can best be described as collaborative. I think it's imperative that we collaborate together as we make decisions, because it's the synergy of great minds together thinking through problems and issues that result in sort of a higher level of decision making. I honestly believe that people support what they help to create, and if you engage your community and you call them forward for their connection to whatever the issue, whatever the task, that they roll up their sleeves and are willing to work towards that collaborative effort, and it always results in a better product, a better decision, and you also see that it's sustainable. If you're a directive leader, once the leader's gone, oftentimes whatever the decision was doesn't hold. But if you have a collaborative style where everybody's involved and everybody's fingerprints are all over whatever the decision was, you see more ownership, more commitment, and more sustainability of the decisions that were made.
This one stresses be specific. What are 3 direct ways we can improve the district in the coming year?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, one of the first things I think we need to do is pull people together for a comprehensive accountability framework. Right now we've got the unified plans at the district level, at the school level. We've got a mission and vision, you've got strategic goals, but you don't have anything that pulls everything together with specific goals and measures. And I think that at the heart of that is to make sure that we're all together on this and that we're all aligned with our actions from the boardroom to the classroom. The second thing that I think that's imperative is engaging our community. And I would like to say that one of the first next steps would be to send out a community survey to parents, to students, to the student staff, to administration, asking aligned questions on our progress and how they feel about our schools. And take that data and report it back. Triangulate that data to see when you frame questions in similar ways. You can see if there's alignment between the different stakeholder groups and how they feel about our schools. The third thing that I think is not as apparent to me that I'd like to see is more student voice. I don't see student voice at the board level. I don't see student voice in terms of focus meetings. And when you talk to each one of the kids, they have a lot to say. And I think that we need to empower them to be part of the solution as we move forward with designing and moving forward with this school system. I learned a great deal from talking to teenagers, talking to little kids. I had a great time talking to the kids as I walked around school on Monday. We can learn so much from kids, and we need to make sure that their voice is heard so that we're creating the kind of school system that meets their needs.
I'll be very specific. All of the board members, most of the administrators have said sometime in the past year, many of them have said this repeatedly, that the most important thing that the district needs to do is reestablish trust between the leadership of the district and the stakeholders in the community. And trust is measurable. One of the ways that we can specifically address the issue of trust is to go to the members of our community. And I haven't even been that active in the community, but I know who some of them are. Some of them have challenged me just because I was a candidate to lead in this district. We have to go to those people as pre-trusting people, and we have to listen honorably to the reasons that they don't trust us. And when they say it's because of this way you made that decision, or spent that resource, or blocked this initiative, we have to take seriously that we own the half of the trusting relationship that we have created. We cannot make deeply cynical, skeptical, oppositional people change their temperament, but we can trust that these faithful, pre-trusting people, we can believe that these pre-trusting people have some kind of grievance, and if it's not a legitimate grievance, we're still going to give it a good hearing. And so I think this is a little different than the survey that Ms. Vedra is talking about. I'm actually talking about going to the New Falcon Herald and going to the comments at the Gazette and going to the letters that have been written to this Board of Education and the administrators in this district, and going to the authors of those comments and asking them to sit down and let's reason together. I'm not suggesting that we are going to be able to meet all of their objections, but it's a specific thing that we can do to address what we all think is the #1 growth need in the district. Here's a second specific thing we can do. We can work very hard over the next school year cycle to get better at developing metrics for abstracts. And here's what I mean by that. If you look at the strategic plan that came out of the work with the Flippin Group, it talks about being the premier district in the state of Colorado. That is a great, big, hairy, audacious goal, to use Jim Collins' term. That's a great BHAG, okay? But it's not really measurable. Let's figure out what we mean by the premier district. Does that mean the most mentions on EdVoice's blog site, or does that mean something about test scores, or does that mean that more people are coming to see what our district is doing? I'm not sure, but I'm sure that we can develop specific metrics. We can measure choice in or out of the district. We can measure graduation rate, but we also need to measure our own behaviors. And so I would lead us in the development of dashboards and report cards for administrator behavior at board meetings, for board member behavior at board meetings, because this is the place where the leadership is most on display. And if we're not displaying behaviors that earn your trust, then we need to know that, and we need to change that. And if that's not specific enough, then I'll bring a whole lot more detail to that if I have the opportunity.
Someone in the group would like to know what Colorado licenses you hold.
I hold a professional teacher's license for secondary social studies all, which I transferred from Minnesota. That's where I kind of cut my teeth and earned my first tenure. Joined both national unions. And then once I got to Colorado, I also pursued and was licensed as a principal. And along with getting my principal license, which I took the principal place test, I also took and passed the superintendent, or it's called the administrator place test, but it's the test that they give to administrators. So I'm licensed teacher, licensed principal.
Currently, I'm principal licensed.
What's your opinion of the parent-educator relationship in a child's upbringing?
I consider the parent to be the child's first teacher. And like a three-legged stool is part of the triad of what makes students successful, is the marriage between the teacher, the student, and the parent. And I think that the relationship should be open, and at all opportunities, open communication and interactive, so that whether it be through parent conferences, whether it be through communication tools that are used at the classroom level, I think it's really important that teachers have a great deal of information that they've obtained from parents on the child to get to know the child better. And the parent also needs to have a perspective of how the child responds in a classroom environment as well. I think between the partnership of parents and teachers, leads to the success of students, and should always be a welcome, positive approach.
My answer to this actually draws on again, a little bit of my personal experience. With our 6 kids, we talked to them about growing up in all the ways that matter. And we come from a Christian tradition, so we cite the New Testament. We talk about this verse that's found in Luke 2:52, and we show it to our kids. It's Luke 2:52. I can't do it fast enough because I have fat fingers. But our children know that this means that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature, in favor with God and in favor with man. And so for us, that means wisdom is the development of the mind. Stature is obviously physical development. In favor with God is the person's spirit. That's not just a religious term, but it's the expressive, the spiritual side that leads to artistic expression and musical expression. And then in favor with God is the social being. And I believe all of those are important. So as an educator, when you trust your child to my care, you are trusting a whole person. You are trusting that child's spirit and their heart. You're trusting their mind and their body. And so it matters to me that I respect that act of trust, and that I respect that you're not just sending your son's mind, you're also sending his social development my way. And you're not just sending your daughter's you're not just sending her physical safety, you're also sending me her spirit. And I owe that protection as well. I owe her an environment where she is emotionally and psychologically safe. And so the partnership between parents the partnership between educators and parents is essentially a trusting partnership. A little vignette where 2 people I love very much did exactly the right thing. There came a day when one of my children did something inappropriate at school. It involved taking something from somebody by force, grabbing it out of her hands. So my wife called up the junior high school principal, and she said to Dr. Russ Sojourner, some of you may know, "Dr. Sojourner, you're going to be suspending my son." And at the time, Dr. Sojourner reported to me because I was the secondary principal. And so that created an awkward little tension, didn't it? But he knew that he had to respect that a parent was contacting him and saying, "Partner with me and hold my son accountable, because you don't do this to a child, you don't do this to another person." And he said back, "Mrs. Hilts, when I have examined the facts of the issues, then I'll contact you and let you know." So he was respecting the parent, but he was also recognizing that his role was to protect that, in this case, our son's students' due process rights. So they were both doing what they were supposed to do to care for the child. They were doing it collaboratively, but they each had a distinct role to play. And at the end, they agreed on the outcome, and my son learned a lesson. It's the last time he was ever in that principal's office, because parent and educator agreed on what to do.
This has a little bit of a setup to it. In difficult fiscal times, there's often pressure to do more with less. Sometimes we can be under so much pressure that the core values of the organization can be overlooked. Give us a specific example of a time when you demonstrated the core organizational values despite significant pressure to complete an assignment or achieve an objective.
This has been an incredibly challenging experience. I've worked for the last 13 years in what I call the innovation sector in Colorado. And so a couple of those years I was the director of technology for Manitou Springs School District, which is it's a charter-like district because 40% of the students in Manitou Springs choice into the district. And that's very unusual. And some of them come down from Woodland Park, quite a few over from District 11. And so there's a very significant market sensibility there. I came from Manitou, I ended up at the Classical Academy, and as you may well understand, as a charter school, no child is obligated to attend our school. Every single child that comes to our school came by choice. So we have to capture that market, and we have to hold that market. And there are some people come to the Classical Academy in part because of the community orientation, but a big part of the draw has been our small class sizes. We cap our high schools at 22, and our youngest grades we cap at 16, and then 18, 20, and 22 as the children get older. And so over the last 4 years, we have been under phenomenal pressure to increase our class sizes, to just bump it up to 24 or 25%. And we have resisted that. we held what we called an advisory group council. We had 10 parents from every grade level at every campus in the same gym at the same time to address what can we do, where can we save, what contributions might parents be able to make, in-kind contributions or contributions of time so that we could free up additional dollars. And so I'm extraordinarily proud. We were not so unrealistic that we wouldn't even think about changing our class sizes. We bumped them from 20 to 22. But we were able to hold the line at 22 because our parents came together with us and said, we value that even more than we value. We canceled busing. I've heard that was an issue out in this district, and I know you didn't cancel it, but we did. We had to cancel our bus services because we were giving a significant benefit to a small portion of our community. We had to make tough choices about what we valued the most, and the way we did it, by putting 300 parents in a room together where they could hear each other's priorities and listen to each other's hearts. It's a great example of the collaborative leadership that Ms. Vedra talked about, but it's also a great example of an organization refusing to be done in by the tyranny of the or. This is a phrase from Jim Collins' book, Built to Last, where it wasn't either hold the line on class sizes or stay solvent. We determined that we were going to do both. We were going to hold the line, and we were going to find cost savings and efficiencies. And we've been able to give our teachers a 3% raise, a 1% raise, and now we're giving them a 2% raise as a charter school. That's phenomenal over the last 4 years.
I worked in Englewood Schools as Executive Director of Learning Services for 10 years. And when I first started in Englewood Schools, we had about 4,500 students. The year that I left, it was down to 2,200 students due to declining enrollment. Every year we had to come to the table to talk about how do we become more efficient, what do we need to do to make our balance the budget. And we did this in a collaborative way, and we'd get together all of our administrators and key leaders together in a room, both certified and classified. And we'd first start out with revisiting our mission and our tagline, and Englewood's tagline was a small school, successful learning. And we always started at the meetings in that way so that we could be reminded of what's going to guide our decision making, because it's easy to go for the quick fix. And sometimes the quick fix is a big hurt. And so we ultimately every year came to a collaborative decision making about what was going to meet the needs with the students' best interests in our mind always. What things could we live without in order to make budget? And sometimes it was difficult. And sometimes we sucked it up, and when we left the room, we all supported each other in making the decisions that were made. But it was always with best interests of students in mind, and back to the focus on our mission, our beliefs, and our tagline.
So as the Chief Education Officer, how will you facilitate a positive difference in our classrooms?
As Chief Education Officer for the district, I think it's imperative that I support the work of this district, the goals, the vision of this district in every way possible. That's why I think it's so important to have an accountability framework that brings together everything that's about what's great about this district and sets its sight on the future. At the classroom level, it's most important that we do our best to support the front line of learning, and especially in tough times, fiscally being fiscally efficient. But also more importantly is supporting the voice of the teacher and making sure that they are involved in all the decisions along the way as well. And that we do what we can to find out what their needs are and to support their needs in every way. My goal would be to remove the barriers and the hurdles, to see what I could do to support the zone leaders in maximizing the vision of their zones, as well as adding to whatever I can to to bring their vision to fruition, and represent as best I can to the board the schools as they are.
Thanks. This is a great last question, because if the CEO's leadership doesn't impact the classroom experience, find a different CEO, because that's ultimately, that's the measure of how well we are doing our job. And the notion of a positive difference, there's a recent thread in the research about schools called positive deviance, looking for schools that deviate from the norm in a positive way. Sometimes they're called uncommon schools because they do more with less. They take at-risk populations and get profoundly high academic outcomes, or they get great cultural identity. And one of the things that the CEO ought to do is to be identifying those examples, those heroic, noble models of excellence in classrooms. But I don't think that we have to go to Philadelphia or Tempe to find them. I know that they're happening here. We were in those schools and classrooms on Monday. But what we sometimes forget, because we're adults, and Piaget would tell us that we think at this formal, operational, kind of abstract level, we sometimes forget that most of our immediate stakeholders, students, we call them kids, but we think they think like adults. And we have to do a much better job in all of our schools about being explicit when students and teachers live out our values. We have to say so. We have to say so in an explicit and concrete way, because the people that are getting that message are not yet developmentally ready. They're not going to just intuit or pick it up. So we have to label and mark people as heroes of our cultural values in the district. And when we do that, when I sat across the table from a fifth grader and I said, so here at Odyssey, what's your identity? Are you the comets? And she said, yeah, but we're really the stars. And then she walked me through, without prompting, what it meant to be respectful and what it meant to be accountable. And it was very clear that she had an identity that some adults, probably multiple adults over multiple years, had made concrete to her. That's a CEO who facilitates that, who expects that and honors that and celebrates that. That's a CEO who's going to ensure that we have the positive difference that we're looking for in the classroom. I aspire to be that CEO. That's why I want to come to this district. The things that we are doing on the mechanical technical side of the district, the innovation zones, the matrix management model, the authentic teacher voice, the whole purpose of all of those things is to get us past internal barriers or external barriers to the level where our classrooms become places that every student wants to be and no teacher would want to leave. That's my vision as a CEO for the classrooms.
This has been the most amazing interview process that I've ever experienced, and I think it works. I mean, to start with the board rather than to end with the board in an interview, to be selected at the front end, knowing that there would be community members who would be interacting with you throughout the next week, and then an opportunity for an open forum with questions, to me is like the ultimate in empowerment of your community, engagement of your community, and I'd have to say that this is a different climate and culture than I've ever experienced, and I think it's absolutely fabulous. When you talk about innovation in this district, it doesn't stop at the zones. It also is part of the board, and I commend you for stepping out with different ways of doing things. And I know it's not easy being on the bleeding edge sometimes, but I am incredibly impressed with this district and what they're doing at this time, and I would feel privileged to be a part of that moving forward. Thank you.
Here's my comment as somebody that has cared about and paid attention to the district, especially over the last 2 years. The perception of this district outside the district is very distorted, but you know who you are, and you know who you are becoming. And when I talk about the promise of public education and the idea of a system of schools where you embrace our charter schools, our optional schools, online, blended, a military charter school, 3 very different kinds of zones of schools, plus the iConnect zone. This is what American public education everywhere is going to look like in 10 years. But in 10 years, Falcon is going to be 10 years further down the road. And it took great courage and a lot of pain to make the commitments to step out and to lead in the way this district has chosen to lead. That's why 10 years ago I applied to lead at the Classical Academy. And I gave them everything I could possibly give them for 10 years, and I never looked anywhere else. This is the first interview I've been on in 10 years because this is the district I want to lead. I want to lead it because you want to lead. And I think our hearts will knit together in the years to come. And that's why I aspire to be your leader. And I ask for that opportunity, members of the board. I ask for your trust to lead this district. Thank you.
Ready? I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say how much I appreciate Mary and Pete. Their experience that I had at the Falcon Virtual Academy with them has just been outstanding. I think your vision for education and your hope for the future and your desires to be part of this and the challenges that it exists is really impressive. I'm so grateful for the years of dedication that you've given to the students, to teachers, to parents. I hope that whichever one of you get the opportunity to be here and lead this wonderful organization, I hope the other person really gets the opportunity to do this somewhere else. Because you're both just amazing people. So grateful that you were part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, a vote please.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Harold.
Aye.
Mr. Irons.
Aye.
Mrs. Revere Wright.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.